Good morning and welcome to another episode of Tea with Z. I hope you're all keeping safe and well, particularly as this Delta strain is kind of taking hold across particularly the eastern states of Australia at the moment. I know we're in now an extended lockdown. We're based in Brisbane, and yeah, it's definitely a different vibe. It feels this time for us anyway, seeing as these are the strictest lockdowns that we in the southeast Queensland corridor are experiencing to date. So it's definitely a new normal for us. And yesterday we covered off, what those contingency plans sort of look like, and whether or not you actually have a contingency plan. And if you do, fantastic. But even the phrasing of contingency plans now revolving around being more so a new normal, not necessarily being pulled out of that drawer as a contingency, but something that we flick on and it just becomes part of a new normal process. And what got me thinking about that for today's topic was the way in which we communicate, the way in which we communicate to our team, to our family, to our friends, to our colleagues, to our leaders, so going up in the organization, but also down from our leadership, going down to our team and to our community as well. And even from our community back to our health businesses and back to the businesses that we interact with. And the power of communication and what communication and the role that communication plays, particularly in this sort of environment, particularly when there's so much messaging going on. People are messaging me right now and saying, what's the latest, what's happening, what should we do in this situation, given that situation. And if I'm getting bombarded with messages, if there is a sense of fear or worry or anxiety that is just being stirred up within our community at the moment, what does that mean for your team? What does that mean for your customers, for your patients? What does that mean even for yourself, for your own family, for your own friends, for your own leadership? What does that mean in your world right now when you are getting bombarded by messages? Are you now taking that on board? How are you filtering out those messages? Because on average, we receive about 16 trillion bits of data every day. Every day. 16 trillion bits of data every day. Now, when we equate that, obviously our brain then deciphers that down and filters out what we don't need to worry about or what we perceive to not be important. But when we're getting bombarded with so much messaging, how are we able to filter out what is relevant to us and then disseminate information quickly and rapidly to those around us so that they can make better decisions, that you can make better decisions, and you can feel empowered in those decisions, knowing that you've got all of the relevant information at hand? And it's really interesting when we look at this. And once again, if you haven't got your drink, have a sip with me now. But it's really interesting when we look at the power of communication. And we're in a very rapidly evolving environment at the moment. We try to watch the press conferences as to understand the state of play. We are engrossed in what the media are telling us and their biases that come about in that. And don't get me wrong, and at the end of the day, it's a very challenging time to deliver communication, but there is a lot of bias as well in the messaging that we're receiving. And it's how do we filter that out? It's how do we take what is relevant and onboard that information into ourselves, but also use that information wisely within our daily lives and along our health entrepreneurial journey to empower those around us. And it got me really thinking, I guess, when we look at planning, does your plan involve a communication strategy? Does your plan actually involve a way in which you can obtain the information, filter out what is relevant, and then disseminate that to your team effectively and proactively? As soon as these lockdowns came into play, not only in New South Wales and Victoria, but now in Southeast Queensland, what was your strategy? How did you onboard that information? And how did you then disseminate that out as a health entrepreneur to your community, to your team, to your family, and to your friends to ensure that they are getting the information that they need so that they can stay on track in their own health entrepreneurial journey? What communication and what messaging have you sent out and imparted that is empowering them to make better decisions, that is empowering them to not only make better decisions for their business or for their personal health, but for their own mental health and well-being as well? How are you communicating your expectations? What you expect of your team and your community during this time? And we're flooded by so much messaging with expectations. We are expected to comply to the restrictions. We are expected to follow the guidelines and the mandates of our governments and our health bodies and the health authorities in order to keep the population safe. And how are you then communicating that to your teams? How are you communicating the directives and the health advice in a way in which empowers your team to make better decisions, empowers your team to also manage a lot of the messaging that is on the other side of their track? And there is increasing amounts of resistance and hostility to the messaging that's coming out at the moment. So not only do we need to look at the messaging that we want to onboard and receive that resonates with us, but we also need to look at the messaging on the other side of that coin and what the power of that holds. What the power of that messaging holds, and how can we then filter it and create a narrative to our team, our colleagues, our communities to better empower them and to make better decisions? Because at the end of the day, everybody has an opinion. But you, as a health entrepreneur, within your family, within your household, within your friend circle, within your business, you have an increasingly amount of responsibility. You have much more responsibility because you have taken the stand. You have put your hand up to say you are a health entrepreneur in any way, shape, or form. And with that entrepreneurial journey comes a sense of responsibility. And that responsibility comes through then and manifests itself through the power of communication. Words during these times have incredible power. And the actions in which you take, either verbal or non-verbal, is all seen as communication. And what does that look like? Are you being proactive to support the health and well-being of your community? Or are you just playing it by ear? Are you relying on the mixed messaging of the public media to do that for you? Or are you working proactively to alleviate the fears, the worries, and the concerns of your community to help ensure that we can get through whatever challenges face us? And right now, we're facing the challenges of lockdowns. But this extends far beyond that. This extends far beyond that. Whether or not, and as we've seen lately in the Olympics, and even more athletes from other disciplines beyond the Olympics now, we're seeing athletes come out in the football field, in soccer, in the Euro, coming out and talking about mental health. We're seeing a lot about the communication of these health topics in our media. And you've got to wonder, well, why is it taking so long? And this all then comes down to the safety in which we give ourselves and the permission that we give ourselves to communicate in a way that is constructive and positive for our environment, whether that be our workplace, whether that be our home, whether that be within and amongst our friendship groups. And the power of communication doesn't just come down to what messaging we disseminate, but it also allows us to hold each other to a standard. It also lays the expectations that we have and the standards that we need to set in order to achieve our goals. And our goals right now might be, look, we just need to survive through this pandemic, or we need to survive through this lockdown. And we're seeing enormous challenges with multiple businesses all over the place right now. And if your goal is just to survive, well, then how are you communicating and alleviating the worries, the anxiety, the fears of your team, your community, your customers around your ability to survive? Because just remember, we're not on this planet alone. We are herd mammals. We communicate, and through the communication, we can alleviate those anxiety, fears, and worries. And as a result, we can unburden all of that stress that is felt, especially in times of challenge. But it's how we go about it. It's the tools in which we use as well. And one thing I did want to touch on is, what tools are you using? Are you using technology to assist in this? And the flip side of that is, are you over relying on the technology? Is it the requirement that you need to have a conversation? Or are you sending, short, sharp messages that don't really delve into the communication that's needed, or the depth of communication that's needed? How are you communicating, and what tools and resources are you using? Are you having maybe little debrief sessions, and you're jumping on free platforms like Google Meet or Zoom, for 10 minutes a day, that, they all have free plans? How are you disseminating this information to your community? Are you using the power of social media and creating content that helps to alleviate the fears and worries of your community? Are they reading articles about your business, about your health entrepreneurship journey within local media sources? Are you now listed as a potential exposure site? And what does that mean? How are you addressing these fears and anxieties and concerns amongst your community? And if you're not doing that now is the time to do it. Now is the time to do it. Because trust me, if you aren't, they're going to find sources themselves that might hold biases or information that is not congruent with what you believe in, what your community should be believing in, and what your community does believe in. And they will find their own sources and interpretations of their truth. And as health entrepreneurs, what is your role? What are you playing in that? What are you playing? And to what level are you playing to communicate and empower those around you with the communication and information that they need to make better informed decisions? So whether or not it's through technology, through social media, through chat messaging, whatever shape or form it is, communication is the key, and open and honest communication as well. And let me stress that. Open and honest communication. There's no point going, oh, look, I'm communicating out. Yes, I'm sending all this messaging out, but it is fluff. It is fluff. If anything, then you are actually doing the opposite. You are providing a disservice to your community. And when we look at one of the essential needs of us as humans, it is certainty. It is certainty. And with certainty, the power of communication is so much more relevant. But it's only if it's open and honest communication. So, what tools are you using to communicate? What messaging are you putting out? What information are you deciphering? Are you filtering out and then disseminating amongst your team, your community, your friends, your family, and reverse back up from your community to those businesses that you work with, that you shop at, and from a team up to your leadership? What are the communication strategies that you are employing and the tools and systems that you're using? And how relevant is that information? And how are you empowering them, your entire collective community, whatever that looks like, to make more conscious and positive health decisions as we go through these challenges. And you, as a health entrepreneur, you have the power to do that. So that's it from me. Now, just want to touch on, as always, the Limitless Network. The Limitless Network is a like-minded group of health entrepreneurs in any way, shape, or form, designed to support one another in a peer-supported environment, in a safe space. And each and every Friday, we deep dive into a topic. We deep dive into a topic and look, it costs nothing to join. You know, if you're finding value from this content, we can only create more value as a community, as a collective hub, and it costs nothing to join. It's as simple as joining, you know, and at the end of the day, it's about creating a community. That's it. So there's if you're finding value about this, bring others on the journey with you, bring yourself on the journey with you. And that's what that community is all about. So that's it from me today. Communication. You hold that responsibility as a health entrepreneur. What tools and resources are you doing to empower yourself and those around you to better do that? Have a fantastic day. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow in another episode of Tea with Z. Stay safe, stay well, and look after yourself and those all around you. Take care, guys. Catch you then. Bye.